Abigail, this is Megan, and welcome to another Two Kids interview.
We are joined by New York Times bestselling author Dan Gemeinhart.
Mr. Gemeinhart has written the books Good Dog, Scar Island,
The Honest Truth, Some Kind of Courage,
and the New York Times #1 bestseller, The Midnight Children.
Thank you for being with us.
We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'm excited to chat with you guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. You write children's books. How are your books influenced by your own childhood?
Oh, nice. I think, in my childhood, I was a big reader. No big surprise there. I read all the time. Books were definitely my thing. So in that respect, even just being an author comes from my childhood. But also as a kid, my family moved around a lot. We moved like every year, sometimes more than once a year. And so I was always kind of, getting used to a new house, a new school, a new neighborhood, having to make new friends. And so a lot of my life was about movement and fitting in and those kinds of things. And books and libraries were kind of my happy place because everything else in my life was always changing, houses and schools and teachers and friends. But wherever I went, books and libraries were always there. And so they became a really important part of me and my life. And I think that's reflected in my books because every one of my books, kind of with the exception of The Midnight Children, is about a journey of some kind. And I've got 6 books out so far, and none of them take place in the character's town, in the character's house. It's all about someone going somewhere to do something, to have a quest or solve a problem or whatever. And even Midnight Children, even though it happens in one town, it's still about a group of children that show up in the middle of the night one night. And so they're on the move and they're trying to figure out how to fit in. And so I think that I don't do that on purpose, like, what journey story am I going to tell this time? But those are just kind of the stories that occur to me or how stories come to me. And I think that probably comes out of my childhood because for me as a kid, home wasn't really a place. Home was kind of wherever you were, and home was wherever your family was. And so those are just kind of the stories that seem to come out of my heart.
How do you come up with the ideas for your books?
Ideas are funny because I get ideas from all over the place, basically. I get ideas from places I go and people I meet and shows I see and movies I watch and books I read and songs I hear and daydreams I have. For me, the ideas are kind of the easy part, because if you pay attention to the world around you, you'll come across 10,000 things today that could be a story or part of a story or a setting or a character. Stories are everywhere. And for me, the harder part, and maybe the funner part, but definitely the harder part, is taking those little ideas you get where you say, oh, that could be a story, or that could be a part of a story, or that could be a character, taking those little seeds and turning them into a whole book that hopefully somebody else would actually want to read. That to me is kind of the work part, especially because since I write chapter books, novels, I really only need one idea a year. And so I can definitely come up with one idea a year. And so the fun, hard work part of it is not getting those ideas, which are all over the place, but on turning them into hopefully an interesting, exciting, inspiring, whatever story that someone else is going to sit down and spend a few hours with to get to the end of.
Can you tell us about a time where you're doing something and noticed someone or something and thought, I need to put that in a book?
So the one that I remember most clearly, because it kind of just happened-ish, compared to the other ones, is that I've got a new book coming out next February, and it is my first ever sequel. It's not really a sequel. We're calling it a standalone companion, but it's basically, you can think of it like a sequel. And it's a sequel to my 5th book, The Remarkable Journey of Coyote Sunrise. And so there's a new Coyote Sunrise book coming out in 2024 called Coyote Lost and Found. And I don't want to give too much. I won't give what the actual thing is. But there is a part of that, a really important conversation that the main character, Coyote, has with her friend Salvador. And he shares an idea, basically. I'm trying not to spoil anything. He shares an idea that he heard in a podcast. And it's something that I heard in a podcast. And I was on a family trip. We were in the car and we were listening to this podcast called Radio Lab, which is this cool kind of science podcast. And they were talking about this thing, which I'm not going to give away. And I said, wow, that is really, really fascinating, first of all. But it's also kind of beautiful and profound, and it could be meaningful as a simile or a metaphor. And so then I've got, just like you said, that's so great. I've got to put that idea, this kind of scientific idea. It's about the life cycle of butterflies. So if you ever read that book and you get to it, you'll know what I'm talking about. And I thought, wow, that is really great. And that'd be cool to have that as part of a story. And I was just about getting ready to start Coyote Lost and Found, start writing it. And it just happened to be the kind of poetic symbolism of that fact, whatever reality, fit perfectly with a struggle that the character was having. And so that's the one I remember the most, because that one kind of just happened. It happened like a year ago. But in my career, where I've been writing for more than a decade, a year ago feels kind of recent. So that one pops to mind for sure.
What is your process when putting a book together?
Do you decide the end before the middle?
Or do you put it together in order?
None of the above. So I make it up as I go. So some authors, they're big outliners and they've got a plan for everything. When they start writing a book, they already know everything that's going to happen. And that's great. There's amazing, award-winning, incredible authors that do that. And there's some authors that have no plan whatsoever, and they completely make it up on the fly. They have no idea what's going to happen. And there's amazing, great award-winning authors in that category. I'm somewhere in the middle, but closer towards the make it up as I go category. So I don't usually start writing until I at least have an idea of the first couple of scenes, and usually some other scenes that might happen later and how it might end. But then that's as far as I get. I don't make any outlines or anything like that. Then I start writing, and then I just start going and see what happens. And so my rough drafts are really rough, because I, write myself into dead ends, and I'll realize, like 4 chapters ago, I should have gone this way and I went that way. So I've got to throw away those 4 chapters. There goes a few weeks work. But that's just kind of my process. I've got to kind of discover the story. I can't just design the story. I wish that I could. I've got to kind of fumble my way through it. And so a lot of times how I think it's going to end, I think, this is how it's going to end. But by the time I get there, I've learned a lot, and the story's changed and the characters changed. And so that ending doesn't fit best anymore. And so I'm a little mixed, but mostly I make it up as I go. And I'm often as surprised by what happens in the story as characters are. And so it's a messy way to write, but it's kind of a fun way to write too.
After you finish your first draft, how much does it take to revise the book?
Oh, a ton, especially because my rough drafts are so rough. So my revising is, I think for everybody, it's a really important part of the process. I'm sure it is. But for me, it's especially because my rough drafts are so rough. And so my revising is not just like fixing my spelling and my punctuation. It's big stuff. I cut out whole chapters, put in whole new chapters, change the endings, change the beginnings, cut out characters, like big stuff. So my rough drafts, I just make a mess. I say, here's how this story might go. And then comes kind of the real work, but also kind of the fun part. I roll up my sleeves and say, okay, I've got 300 pages of mess here. It's time to snap it into focus and cut out what doesn't need to be there and put in what does need to be there to make the story as good as it can be. And so my process is I just do a lot of revising, a lot of read-throughs. I go through it a few times myself. Again, making big changes, really changing the story to make it fit how it should fit. And then I start having other people read it. I have my wife read it. She's always my first reader. My last probably 4 books, my kids, because I've got 3 daughters that are going to be in 11th grade, 8th grade, and 5th grade. And so for the last 4 years, they've been kind of perfect for kind of my audience. And so after I finish a rough draft, I read it out loud to them and see what they like and what they don't like and what they want more of and what they want less of and what they're confused by. And that really helps me fix it up. And then I just keep going through it. And then once it goes to my publisher, my book company, then we go through it like another 4 or 5 times with suggestions from different people, editors and copy editors, finding mistakes, suggesting changes, making that story as good as it can be. And so by the time it comes out, I've gone through it, easily 12 to 15 times. And that's just kind of what it takes, especially with drafts as rough as mine, to make the story as good as hopefully it can be.
Being an author often comes with a lot of rejection.
Was that part of your journey?
Of 100%. So yeah. So when I decided, I've had this dream of being a writer since I was a little kid, since I was like a kindergartner. And I was like, in my 20s, I was a teacher and I was perfectly happy. But I thought, I've always had this dream of being a writer. I should give it a shot. And then I got really into it. I really jumped in and I started writing books and working on it and taking classes and going to workshops. But it still took me 10 years from when I started really trying to become a writer until I actually got a book published took me 10 years. And I wrote several books that never got published because they were terrible, because that's just a learning process. I took a lot of swings and misses before I ever hit the ball. And I got a ton of rejections. In fact, since I'm here in my little home office, I can even show you if I move these books. So these are some of the rejections that I got. So these are all letters back from publishers or agents when I sent them my story saying, hey, I wrote this book. Do you want to publish it? And they wrote back for a decade and said no. And they were smart because the stuff I was writing was terrible. But I kept working. I didn't give up. Day by day, book by book, I got better and better and better. And finally, on The Honest Truth, this is the 6th book that I wrote, but it's the first book that I got published. Those first 5 never got published, and they never will. Finally, on this one, just a short decade in, I finally got, it was an email, not a letter. Actually, it was a phone call. I got a phone call and they said, yes, we would like to publish your book. And it's been a really fun journey ever since. And so I'm really grateful that I didn't give up. And that's a big lesson that I learned, to be determined and to pick yourself back up. And even if you get knocked down, to believe in yourself. And even if you're not good enough, that's okay, because what you are maybe is not good enough yet. And if you keep working and keep trying, keep getting better, you'll be a little bit better tomorrow and a little bit better the next day. And maybe someday you'll finally get whatever you're shooting for, whatever you're reaching for, maybe you'll finally get it. And thank goodness for me, I finally did.
When a child reads one of your books, what do you hope they will get out of it?
Nice. Well, number one, I just hope they have fun reading it. Like, yes, in your books, you try to put in some themes or some lessons, some wisdom, eye roll, but something, yeah, you try to put something of value in there. Sure. But really, at the end of the day, I want to write a fun story that kids will enjoy and they'll get to the end of. Not every kid, like no book is a good fit for everybody. And there's be tons of people who read my books who don't like them, and that's totally fine. But hopefully some kids, most kids, or adults, readers, will enjoy my stories, and they'll be fun stories. Yes, hopefully they'll make them think about some things and wonder about some things and feel some things, but mostly I want a good story that's going to make the kid keep reading and then maybe pick up another book by me or by somebody else, because there's a lot competing for our attention out there these days. Between our phones and our screens and our iPads and games and apps and social media, and even just like school and sports and friends. And so to ask anybody, but especially say a 12-year-old, to sit down for however long it takes to read a chapter book, I don't know, 15 hours, 20 hours, that's kind of a big ask. So I don't want to waste their time, and I want to make it a fun story that they're going to enjoy reading.
What writer has had the most influence on you?
There's really not one, because I was such a big reader as a kid. Like in summer, like here we are talking in the summertime. In the summer when I was a kid, there were no smartphones, and there wasn't even really TV. I mean, there was TV, but we got like 3 channels. And so during the day it was all soap operas. And so there wasn't near the distractions. Plus, I just love books and love reading. And so I would read like a book a day when I was a kid. I would go to the library and get a whole bag of books, and I would read like basically a book a day if it was a good book, and then take them back and get a whole another bag of books. That was like my summer. And so I was inspired by a ton of stories and a ton of authors, and still am. There are so many great authors writing so many amazing books these days. It's an amazing time to be a reader. And so, I mean, Gary Paulson, he's the author of Hatchet and a bunch of other books. I loved his books. I loved, she wasn't writing when I was a kid, but I discovered her later on. Pam Munoz-Ryan and Sharon Creech and Sharon Draper, 2 great Sharons, are 3 authors, I guess, that really kind of continue to inspire me. Jason Reynolds is an author writing today. I did not read him as a kid, but because he wasn't around, he's basically my age. But as an adult, I'm blown away. I don't think he's written picture books, but he's written middle grade and YA and poetry and all not graphic novels, but all sorts of books. He's amazing. Jacqueline Woodson is the same. She has written picture books, middle grade, YA, and adult books, and they're all amazing. And so there's a lot of authors. Alan Gratz is writing incredible books these days, who inspired me at the time, or today are inspiring me with just being awesome storytellers.
Which of your books do you think would make the best movie?
It's so having a book be made into a movie would be very exciting and fun. It's nothing that an author really works on. It would be a movie company that would hear about a book, they would decide it would make a good movie, and then they would buy the film rights. And that has happened with one of my books. So this one, The Remarkable Journey of Coyote Sunrise, this one, a movie company has bought the rights, and it doesn't mean it's going to get made into a movie, because those companies buy a ton of books and only a few make it all the way to actually making a movie. because there's a lot of obstacles and challenges along the way, and most projects don't make it to the end. But it's made it through a lot of the first few steps. They've got a director signed, they've got a screenwriter, they've finished a script, they've got producers. And so this one might get made into a movie someday, or something else, a limited series or something. I don't know. Fingers crossed. But it's nothing that I'm working on myself, and it's nothing that I really can work on. And so I guess that one's got the best chance. And it is pretty cinematic. It's got some big scenes, and it's got some good characters, and hopefully a fun story. And so I guess Coyote Sunrise is my best bet to ever see myself on a screen, or my stories on a screen.
What advice do you have for young people who want to write?
Nice. I would say there's really three pieces of advice, I would say. One is to read a lot. Reading is the second best thing you can do to get ready to be a writer. Writing is number one. But reading is great. It exposes you to words and sentences and characters and stories. And you get a feel for what kind of stories you love, what kind of stories you don't. That can help you figure out what kind of stories you might want to tell. And also you can start to recognize things that are work and don't work for you in a story. Like, oh, if you're loving a book, but then a scene really disappoints me, but then you say, why? Like, what would I have done if I was the author? What choices did the author make? Or the other way around. Like, if a scene moves you and you're crying, like, how did the author do that? What did they do to make me feel these big feelings? And that you start to read like a writer, and it really helps you when you start writing your own stuff. So read a lot. Also, writing. Writing is the best practice for writing. It doesn't matter what you're writing. You can be writing poetry, you can be writing fan fiction, you can be writing for your school newspaper, you can be writing in your diary. It doesn't matter what you're writing or who it's for, it's all the same skill. It's having a thought or an idea in your head and trying to put it into words that are clear and interesting. It's the same thing. So writing a lot. And the third thing is, and it sounds like weird advice, but don't worry about it being good. That can be really, at least for me, can be really paralyzing. And I'll think, is this good? Is this the best direction? Is this what I should be doing? Is this terrible? And it'll freeze me up and I won't be writing. Just get it down, get it on paper or get it on your screen, whatever you're writing. And then if it's garbage, you throw it away and you try something else. If it's pretty good, then you work on it and revise it to make it better. But you have to have words down and story going for you to have anything to work on. And so don't worry about it being good. Worry about getting it done and having fun with it. And then if it's something you like, work on making it good during the revising and editing. So those are the three pieces of advice I would have for young writers.
That's big advice.
Do you also have a smaller tip? Something you do when you're writing?
Figuring out how you write best is kind of an important part of being a writer. Some people write on paper, some people write on computers, some people write in the morning, some people write at night. Some people write in a coffee shop. They get like all the stimulation and people coming in and out helps them. For me, I'm way too easily distracted. And if I sit and write in a coffee shop for an hour, I'll get about 90 seconds of work done because I'm too easily distracted. So I'm more of a quiet, dark place so I can focus on my story. And so, nothing, but see, that wouldn't be advice because for some people that would be terrible and their brain gets too restless if there's not any stimulation. So I would say kind of all that together, like figure out what works for you.
Do you have any other projects in the works that you can tell us about?
Sure. So I've got that Coyote book coming out, and that's basically done. We've done all the editing and revising. Now we're down to maybe one last round of copy editing, and that's the small stuff. That's like this period, or probably not a period. Hopefully I know where periods go. This comma should be whatever, like the very small stuff. So all the big stuff and even all the medium stuff is done. So that one's basically done. I'll probably look through it one more time looking for that tiny stuff. So that's exciting. And we've got a cover and everything. It's up on Amazon and wherever, IndieBound, if you want to look at it. So that's done. I've got 2 picture books that are coming out. I love picture books, and I've never written picture books before. I've got a picture book coming out next August, I think. My first picture book called Once Upon a Friend. And then I've got another picture book coming out, and I don't think we have a date yet. Publishing is an incredibly slow business. Everything is planned years out. So this second picture book that I'm talking about, it's done. I wrote it. I sold it in 2022, and the publisher said, yes, we're going to publish it. That's not going to come out until probably 2026. That's just how slow, maybe 2025 if we push it. So that one is coming out, but like way down the line. And then, I'm always working on new stuff, different kinds of projects, but nothing that's anywhere close to like having a date or being published or even under contract yet. I'm in that, since I just finished that Coyote book, I'm in kind of the fun phase where I'm like, all right, I finished one book. So what should I work on next? What novel or chapter book besides the picture books am I going to jump into? And I want to pick a good one because I'm going to be spending a couple years with that idea, right? And so I've got an idea that I'm literally about 1 page into, but I'm really excited about. It's another like middle grade novel like these ones. And so I will hopefully get that done this year. I've just started it, and then that would theoretically come out in maybe 2025 or 2026 because publishing is so slow. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
Finally, it's time for our Turbo 10.
10 rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Number 1, what is your favorite phrase to use?
Oh, it's supposed to be rapid fire. Favorite phrase to use. Okay. How about the phrase I use the most often, especially during the summer with my kids, is get off your screen. Get off your screen. That's the number one right now. I'm saying it 30 to 40 times a day.
Number 2, what's one subject you'd love to learn more about?
Ooh, I'm fascinated by history, all kinds of human history. And so anytime I'm in a museum or something, I read all the signs, drives my family crazy. So I would say history.
Number 3, what is your go-to snack food?
This is boring. Apples. I love apples. They're like a treat. They're so sweet and juicy. So apples.
Number 4, what was your favorite book growing up?
Hatchet by Gary Paulson.
Number 5, if you could go teleport somewhere right now, where would you go?
So I would say I would love to see, I think, Thailand or Cambodia.
Number 6, if you could have one superpower, what would it be?
I would like to be able to fly.
Number 7, what was your favorite cartoon as a kid?
There was a show called Thundercats that I was really into. I don't hear a lot about it. It kind of fell off the radar. Thundercats was great.
Number 8, what was your favorite rainy day activity?
Oh, reading. 100% reading still is reading for sure.
Number 9, if you could have 3 dinner guests, who would they be?
Ooh. I would say Mark Twain. I'm thinking of intelligent, interesting people. This would be a random dinner party. I'm going to say Mark Twain, Queen Elizabeth, and Barack Obama. That would be quite a dinner party. We have a lot to talk about.
Number 10, what's the best piece of advice you were ever given?
Oh, I mean, very basic. But like I said in my story of getting published, don't give up. It's so easy to give up. It's so tempting to give up. And it can be hard not to give up, especially when you've been trying for 9 years and gotten nothing but no's. But if it matters to you, pick yourself up, give it one more shot, get a little closer tomorrow than you got today. So that's very, very simple, but just don't give up.
You did great. Thank you so much for doing that.
And thank you for spending this time with us.
We really
Absolutely.
appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity. I had a great time chatting with you guys.